The social context of change. Concepts and research from community psychology can inform community development practice by reframing social capital theory. Social change is generally defined and measured at the interpersonal, community, institutional, or societal levels in the terms of networks, that is, bridging, and norms of reciprocity and trust, which is bonding, within those networks. Social changes should be analyzed in a multi level ecological framework in terms of both individual, psychological, and behavioral conceptions. That is, the sense of community, collective efficacy or empowerment, neighboring and citizen participation, and institutional and community network level conceptions. Excessive concern for social cohesion undermines the ability to confront or engage in necessary conflict, and thus it dispowers the community. Instead of emphasizing social cohesion, network bridging opportunities to increase power, access, and learning should be emphasized. Institutional and community network analysis shows how SC operates at these levels and where to target service resources and develop mediating structures. Psychological and behavioral factors point to factors that motivate individuals to engage in building SC, which is the social change, and methods to maintain and improve that engagement. If we put it in a table, I would be able to explain it better to you. For example, we talk about the social trend, which would be inequality. The challenge henceforth would be widening societal schisms. Possibilities for resistance would be the focus energies with those with least power. Local action would be dialogical relations with marginalized people, and the wider struggle would be struggle for social justice and equity. A look at the figure shows the interdependence between individual values and group values, and between group values and societal or community values, and then the factor of change that occurs. Let's talk about the individual values. The values that I have listed here are consciousness of self, congruence, and commitment. There is an interdependent relationship between individual values and group values, and the group values listed are collaboration, common purpose, and controversy with civility. Then we go on to the societal values. Again, an interrelationship between the societal or community values and group values can be seen. The societal values are citizenship. Then comes the change. The individual values lead to the change in citizenship and vice versa. That is, citizenship brings about change in individual values of consciousness, congruence, and commitment. Talking about change, applications of community psychology are derived from a philosophy of change based on the community psychologist being actively involved in community processes while seeking to understand them. The opposite of this would look like an outside expert peering through a window in the community inside, assessing from outside to guide interventions for within. Community psychology interventions are aptly placed in the community in non-clinical settings. With prevention as a focus, the community psychologist aims to effect social change in a broad context while participating in the community itself and conceptualizing change and collaboration with other community members who ultimately own the process of change anyways. Let's have a look at the next figure, which is a social change wheel. The wheel has philanthropy, it has community and economic developments, voting and formal political activities, informal activism, socially responsible daily behavior, community-based participatory research, advocacy, community organizing, charitable volunteerism, social entrepreneurship, protests and demonstrations, and it has community building. Next, we are going to talk about the indigenous resources. It would be reinvention to overlook what exists in a community already as a resource. It is important to value and to collaborate with the expertise within a community. This focuses on strengths and competency building, which helps shift the focus away from pathology. Citizen participation. Community members themselves are the true experts of their own situation. It's absurd to think otherwise. Therefore, community psychologists welcome and desire citizen participation in design, implementation, and evaluation of any community intervention. Recognizing the expertise and practical understanding of community members will inform the community psychology, and she partners with those in the community to effect meaningful change. The next thing that we are going to talk about is sharing power. Community psychologists aim to effect social change in broad contexts, ideally as prevention. This is a goal best reached by collaborating with others, utilizing existing resources in the community, and involving citizen participation in every aspect of program design, implementation, and evaluation. This is a shift in perspective for many people, particularly because the goals of community psychology can be reached by sharing power, by removing the us versus them mentality, by eliminating the status differential between experts and those served by the experts, and by involving all members of a community, including those who may be otherwise oppressed. In genuinely recognizing the community members as the true experts on their situation, the community intervention that result will be based on needs identified by the community members themselves, structured by their participation, and evaluated by their perception of change. Sharing power hence lends itself well to sustainability of programs. Not sharing power lends itself to misguided interventions, not informed by the community and not focused on needs important to community members. Therefore, not sharing power in a community process will not likely to be sustainable, effective, or even ethical. The next concept that we are going to talk about is that of social justice. Community psychologists focus on the rights to which all persons are entitled, and they use the privileges accorded to them to effect changes towards a more equitable allocation of resources, especially for those who may be marginalized. More equal access to resources involves all community members in the system surrounding their lives. More equal access increases citizens' participation, that is, all should be free to participate, and citizen participation makes for a community that is likely empowered to improve the quality of life. Privilege is a special advantage, immunity, permission, right, or benefit granted or enjoyed by an individual, class, or caste. Privilege, in effect, is a social resource, and community members have varying amounts of it. Coping is how we use the resources available to us with stressors. Therefore, a person's ability to cope with stressors of any kind is in part a function of one's social privilege in a given context. It is important to keep this in mind when making decisions that affect the lives of others. Let's shift now to the sense of community. Many psychologists believe that a defining problem in Western society is the alienation and loneliness that comes with the individualism that is so highlighted in our way of life. The antidote is a strengthened sense of community. Sense of community is a powerful and emotional force that increases quality of life. It is critical to both our individual and collective well-being. This is important in a time when too often we are separated by our diversity rather than improved because of it. Sense of community includes essential qualities, membership, influence, integration, and fulfillment of needs, and also a shared emotional connection. It is a fact that members participate in various communities in part because of their needs are met therein. Their needs are met through connecting with other members. Members are also attracted to communities in which they feel influential, share commonly held ideals that can be pursued through involvement in the community, and experience a sense of belonging. Community psychologists sometimes strive to foster a sense of community in a group, recognizing the benefits to community members in making the experience more enriching and supportive. We are going to talk about the different types of social change. Begin with individual social changes. The first thing that we are going to discuss here is social mobility. In this situation, people change to fit in with the majority. It is usually related to class or wealth, as sexuality, race, and gender are things you cannot change. However, a few people do argue that our sexuality is a choice. An example of this could be a poor man working hard to become upper class and rich, then becomes part of that majority and forgetting his roots from the poor minority. Next, we shift our focus on group social changes. Here we talk about social creativity. Here people try to rise above social segregation or grouping. This could be someone rising above a majority for religion, sexuality, gender, ethnicity, or more. An example of this is a female choosing not to argue with a male-based society and simply living with it, being the better person. Then comes social competition. In this situation, people challenge the majority and fight against social norms and often involves internalization. Again, this could be to do with ethnicity, sexuality, gender, or more. An example of this could be Martin Luther King challenging the segregation between black and white people and internalizing his own beliefs. Let's talk about factors that affect social changes. The main factors which affect social change are as follows. We are going to focus about natural factors. Natural forces and factors play an important role in unifying or disintegrating the society. Although human beings have made tremendous progress during the last 150 years or so, yet they have not been able to wield full control over the nature. A storm, earthquake, flood, drought, disease, and similar natural events even today can disrupt the social system. Natural calamities like floods, earthquakes, droughts, famines, and other natural disasters always force changes in the social conditions and life of the affected people. On the one hand, these factors and forces act as a source of big loss for the victims. And on the other hand, these initiate efforts aimed at rapid construction, or let's say reconstruction and development. As such, the natural factors can be on one hand causing havoc in physical conditions of social life, but on the other hand, these may also affect the social conditions in a positive manner. Shifting now to geographical factors of social change. The geographical conditions always affect the social system and act as factors of social change. The cultural life of the people depends upon the physical environment. Progress also depends upon the availability of natural resources, their exploitation, and how are these being recouped and preserved. The climate always affects the socio-economic activities of the people. For instance, there is a little economic activity at both poles, that is the north and the south. Due to intense and long spells of cold, the speed of social change remains negligible. On the other hand, there is always an intense activity in temperate zones, which are neither too cold nor too warm, and consequently, the speed of social changes is quite fast. It is necessary to remember that physical environment changes slowly, and in a society, social change can come at a fast rate. As such, geographic factors are not the sole determining factors of social change. Social change never comes due to any single factor. During the last several centuries, there have been no appreciable changes in the physical environment of Europe. And yet, during the same period, a big social change came in European societies under the impact of technology revolutions of the 20th century. Now we are going to talk about the biological factors. Biological factors also affect social change. Biological factors are those factors which determine the structure, selection, and hereditary qualities of generations. The human element is ever changing. Each new generation is different from the previous generation. It is different in form, ideas, and in many other ways from the one gone before. Darwin and Spencer are of the opinion that each generation and its members have to compromise with the physical environment. Only those persons survive in the struggle for life who are fit and able to live, or those, in other words, who have the ability to face the physical conditions. The weak ones get destroyed. The process of the survival of the fittest affects the social organization. The next point is demographic factors. The demographic factors always influence the process and nature of social change. The population increase or decrease always brings social problems. When the birth rate in a society exceeds death rate, population begins to rise. A constantly rising population gives birth to poverty, unemployment, disease, and several other related problems. On the other hand, a low birth rate leads to decrease in the size of the population. When population is low, there are fewer skilled hands available and the country cannot make full use of the natural resources. The social conditions deteriorate and the size of families shrink and it affects the social relations. Even the sex ratio in a society greatly influences the social order. When in a society the number of women is more than men, the custom of polygamy sets in. On the contrary, if there are more men than women, it often gives rise to polyandry. When women outnumber men, dowry system becomes common, and when men outnumber women, the custom of bride valuation starts. Falling ratio of females in a society always creates a dangerous unbalance in that society. Population always influences social institutions, relations, social structure, values and ideals. Demographic factors have large and profound bearing on the society as well as on the process of social change. The next sector of factors are socio-economic factors. The economic factors constitute an important factor of social change. Marx said that the entire social structure of a country is determined by economic factors, that is, the means of production and distribution of material. When there are changes in the means of production, that is, the material productive forces of the society, it always ultimately changes the social organization. The birth of the institution of marriage and family took place under the influence of the means of production of material means of livelihood. With the birth of family, wealth and possessions became important. The condition of women gets ameliorated in developed societies. The social values, norms and traditions underwent a big change. Thus, socio-economic factors have been and continue to be fundamentally important factors of social change. But these are not the only determinants of social change. There are cultural factors as well, which we are going to discuss now. The cultural factors also play a role in bringing about social change. Our social life depends upon our beliefs, ideas, values, customs, conventions, institutions and the like. When there is a change in these, it influences the social life. For example, let us consider the system of marriage. To begin with, the ceremonies were religious and people regarded marriage as something sacred and irrevocable. Today, we hold a different view. Marriage is held to be good for personal comfort. It has affected the thinking in favor of irrevocability of marriage, and consequently, the number of divorces have registered a big increase. Also, the view regarding the issues of child born out of marriage has undergone a change. Today, all Western societies have been living with children born to unwed mothers and children belonging to broken families. In India, the mad love for a male child and the short sighted view of a girl child as a burden have together given rise to evil and inhuman and dangerous practice of female feticide. The pressure of modern industrial culture have forced the people to practice small family norms. The relations between the parents and children have undergone a big change. The new love and need for working couples has acted as a source of big change in family relations and culture. Thus, socioeconomic and cultural factors always act as a big and formidable factor of social change. Let's summarize it all. Social changes are a compelling idea which have emerged as a genuine force in the variety of debates. It has become the focus for community building initiatives by foundations, a popular piece of political rhetoric, and importantly, a basis for interdisciplinary conversation. The concept has stimulated scholarly discourse and empirical research in several disciplines and the field of community development. Only recently has the concept appeared in psychology, which has been slower to embrace social changes. However, community psychology has invested heavily in the related concepts of cells of community, empowerment, citizen participation, and neighboring ideas with a rich history of psychology and relevance to social changes. Murray Levin has proposed 5 ecological principles of social change. Number 1, a problem arises in a setting or in a situation. Factors in the situation cause or trigger, exasperate, or maintain the problem. A problem arises because the problem resolving or the adaptive capacity, as we call it, of the social setting is blocked. Number 3, to be effective, help has to be located strategically to the manifestation of the problem. Of course, this may seem obvious, especially to community developers, but psychological and other social service professionals often locate help passively in an office removed from the need. Next, the goal and value of the helping agent or service must be consistent with the goals and values of the setting. Number 5, the form of help should be potential for being established on a systematic basis using the natural resources of the setting or through introducing resources which can become institutionalized as part of the setting. Community research and action requires explicit attention to and respect for diversity among people and settings. Human competencies and problems are best understood by viewing people within their social, cultural, economic, geographic, and historical contexts. Community research and action is an active collaboration among researchers, practitioners, and community members that uses multiple methodologies. Change strategies are needed at multiple levels in order to foster settings that promote competence and well-being.